Good morning, everyone. Welcome, board members and guests, to the Wednesday, August 28th, 2024 meeting of the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, Placer County Airport Land Use Commission, Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Service Agency, and the Placer County Local Transportation Authority Board meeting. Board actions will be by roll call vote today. For public comment, after I open an item for public comment, those joining us by Zoom webinar can signal that they wish to speak by clicking the raised hand button, which is located in the middle bottom of the Zoom webinar window. If you are joining over the phone, you can press *9. PCTPA staff will call out individuals one by one who have indicated they wish to speak. If you experience technical difficulty and are unable to provide public comment during this meeting, please email your comment to Solvi Sable at ssabol@pctpa.net. And you do have access to that, correct? Wonderful. And so thank you. And Alice, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
Please stand. Join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is roll call. Could we get a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Broadway.
Here.
Burris.
Here.
Cortez. Absent. Down Calvillo.
Present.
Holmes.
Here.
Hadeshelt.
Here.
Joyner.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Wilkins. We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next item is agenda review. Matt, are there any changes to today's agenda?
No changes, Chair.
No changes. Thank you so much. Our next item is AB 2449.
No action needed relative to AB 2449.
Wonderful. Next item is approval of our minutes from the June 26, 2024 meeting. Those were provided electronically to us as well as posted online. Are there any questions or concerns regarding the minutes? No? If not, could we get action on the minutes?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? There being none, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Broadway.
Yes.
Burris.
Yes.
Down Calvillo.
Aye.
Holmes.
Yes.
Hadeshelt.
Yes.
Joyner.
Yes.
Jones.
Abstain, I was not here.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Our next item is public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any item not on our agenda today. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone in chambers that wishes to comment on an item not on our agenda today? Yes, sir. You can approach the mic. If you wouldn't mind, please state your name.
Lead transit ambassador at the Sacramento Regional Transit District, and I want to present to each of you a major project in the region that is happening and can have impacts during the project to operations for Placer County Transit and possibly in the future through a service called the Link from Roseville Transit. The Link is a work in progress, so it doesn't operate yet. But more on that, as that is part of the comprehensive operational analysis and short-range transit plan for Roseville Transit. But this is the Watt I-80 reimagination project. It is one of the region's busiest transit centers, currently served by the Blue Line, which is our light rail line from Watt I-80 all the way down to Cosumnes River College, traveling through downtown Sacramento. Many of our major bus lines travel there, like the 1, the 15, the 26, the 84, and the 93, along with Placer County Transit operates Route 10 to the Auburn station across the way and behind this building where the Capitol Corridor has its easternmost terminus. The Placer route runs 6 days a week, every hour. services not offered currently on Sunday or major holidays, including one coming up Monday, September 2nd, Labor Day. But this project is going to redo the station, the staircase, it'll widen the bus lane that buses come in now to accommodate more public transportation along that access roadway in the future, and is roughly a 20-month project, and it should be completed in early 2026. One thing I will do, because it is a project in progress, and I have shown at least 3 staff this morning prior to the start of the meeting, I will take photos each morning, transferring between train and bus to give staff the most up-to-date look of what's happening and what the contractor is doing that will have an impact to service or operations at the station. Does anybody have any questions about this project at the moment?
Any questions?
Yes.
Michael, thank you for sharing that during public comment. If at some point you would like to make a more detailed presentation, bring pictures and other information, certainly you could work with staff to get on the agenda for a formal presentation. So if you'd like a little more time, but thank you for joining us today.
The QR code you have on the flip of that card I gave you, it's the project information card. It's the size of a business card. If you go and scan the QR code, you'll be able to get a lot of details, more than what a 3-minute presentation would be able to give you at any meeting.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Michael.
Thank you.
Appreciate you
Yep.
being here.
That's Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else in chambers that wishes to speak today? No one? Is there anyone online? No? All right, we will close public comments and we'll move to our consent calendar. We have 3 items on consent today. These items are routine and non-controversial and can be acted on in one action. With that, is there anyone from the board that wishes to pull an item on the consent calendar?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
No? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to pull an item on our consent calendar? There being none, I will bring it back to the board for action.
Move approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any further discussion? There being none, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Broadway,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Holmes,
Yes.
Howdeshelt,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful, thank you. Our next item is designating of funds as committed fund balance. And Jody, I believe you are presenting that today.
Yes, good morning, Chair and members of the board. The resolution presented to you today is to utilize the proceeds from the Nevada Station sale to commit them to being used for other post-employment benefits. The idea is to put these funds into a LAIF account with the state treasury. It's a pooled fund, and to be used just for a specific purpose. We don't need to use them now. It's just in case of any future uncertainty.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions from the board for Jody on this item? Straightforward, there being no questions, does anyone from the public in chambers wish to comment on this item? There being no one from the public, do we have anyone online? Wonderful, I will bring it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of resolution number 2423 to commit funds in accordance with Government Standards Accounting Board Statement number 54 from the net proceeds of the Nevada Station building sale.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No? All right. Could we get a roll call vote, please?
Broadway,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Holmes, Howdeshelt,
Aye.
Joyner,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful, thank you. Our next item is the Placer County, or Placer County-wide Active Transportation Plan update, and I believe Corey is giving that presentation.
Yep, and I'm going to pinch hit right here from Sylvie's seat. So this is just a brief update. The last time we talked about Our countywide active transportation plan was back in February when we brought the approval of the consultant contract to this board. I just wanted to give a brief update on the project and let you know kind of where we're going with it. First of all, just kind of explaining what the active transportation plan is. This is a countywide plan that's going to look at projects to improve walking, biking, and rolling all across Placer County. So we're working with all of your jurisdictions to do analysis, community outreach, and come up with projects that will help to bring in more money to this county to improve walking and biking conditions. So just to kind of illustrate who is participating, so we are working with all 6 cities and the county. Roseville is doing their own active transportation plan that's currently being led by their staff, as well as the cities of Rockland and Auburn, and we're incorporating a lot of our analysis within Rockland and Auburn specifically to include them as well. Next slide. So what we've done to date is we've completed our first round of outreach. Staff was out in each of your communities at pop-up events, doing festivals and farmers markets. We went to the Cinco de Mayo Festival in Lincoln. We were at the Auburn Farmers Market. We were all over the county, did an online survey and got over 400 responses. So we're working on summarizing those results now. The analysis portions of the plan are ongoing, and we're expected to start identifying projects in consultation with their staffs probably at the beginning of 2025. We'll also do an additional round of community outreach and go out to the public and ask for their input on the projects. But the main thing I wanted to cover is that we'll be doing a round of council presentations at each of your boards and councils. So we'll be in each of the 6 cities as well as Placer County on the dates listed below, and we'll be kind of talking about some of our progress and the specific outreach results in each city. That is all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Corey. Are there any questions from the board for Corey?
I do. What is rolling?
So rolling would be like scooters, wheelchairs, rollerblades, skateboards.
Bicycle.
All right.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
All right.
Little neat things when you have a cast on your foot.
Rolling is anything with wheels on it except the bicycle.
I do have one more question. Even though we're doing our own in Roseville, are you going to come to Roseville?
Yes. So the plan right now is we're going to come to the Transportation Commission probably later on, and once we start talking about projects and coordinating your projects with ours, that's when we'll be coming to the TC.
All right. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions for Corey? No? All right. Is there anyone from the public here in chambers that wishes to comment on this item? Anyone online? All right, wonderful. That was informational only. No action needed. Next item is the Placer County Evacuation and Transportation Resiliency Plan update. And David, I believe you're going to give us a presentation.
Good morning, members of the board. So just a brief update here on the proposed Placer County Evacuation and Transportation Resiliency Plan. So back in January, we worked with Placer County Office of Emergency Services, and we submitted a climate adaptation planning grant to Caltrans. And the grant proposal was to prepare an evacuation and transportation resiliency plan. Grant amount was $630,000, and Office of Emergency Services was nice enough to participate with providing the local match to the tune of $100,000. So the total cost of the project is $730,000. We received on July 9th a conditional award letter from Caltrans, which is good news, and they indicated 2 specific conditions. They thought our schedule was a bit aggressive, and they wanted it to match the schedule that OES has for the local hazard mitigation plan. And this particular effort here will provide input into the local hazard mitigation plan, and so we were fine with refining the schedule. And the other condition is that we need to come back to the board here and include the grant within the OWP, so you'll see an OWP amendment here in September, and we'll need the board to approve that. And then we'll submit that to Caltrans. And those will satisfy the 2 conditions, and then hopefully we'll be able to get a notice to proceed with Caltrans in November. And then there's a process that you have to deal with. We probably would be back to the board in February or March with hopefully a recommendation on a consultant contract award. Okay, so what will we do? So we're going to be looking at climate-related vulnerabilities in the county's transportation system, and so that includes wildfire. It'll include flooding, snow events, extreme heat. Obviously, we're going to prioritize, these types of extreme events because wildfire is probably paramount of importance to this county. Flooding is also important in terms of the western county. So we'll go through that analysis as part of developing the final scope of work for the RFP. We'll also look at concurrent and cascading events because that was something that OES wanted us to look at because there's always the possibility that you have two events occurring and you need to be able to deal with evacuation for two events. And of course, also you'll have cascading events. One event precipitates another, so we need to take that into account. Coordination will be extremely important, and because OES is providing match, we will be working quite closely with OES as well as the local jurisdictions, and there are a number of first responders within the county, and so we'll be working with those. So obviously, this will include a robust coordination effort. It'll also include a robust outreach effort with communities. You've got a lot of fire-safe councils, and of course, your various elected bodies will all be coordinating with them and providing outreach, and particularly to communities that are affected by the climate-related events. And this will ultimately all of this will pull together and we'll have identified evacuation and infrastructure resiliency projects, and it'll culminate in a countywide plan. And just lastly here, this effort will support the various general plan safety elements, and the county has a sustainability plan, and obviously this will play an important component in the update of the local hazard mitigation plan. And there's various legislation that the state has passed that requires the Office of Emergency Services and local responders to look at evacuation routes and resiliency hub locations. So we'll take that into account with the planning effort, and so it'll support that. And lastly, the goal is, of course, to create a more safe, sustainable, and resilient transportation system. So with that, I'd be glad to take any questions.
Are there any questions from the board regarding this item?
Resiliency Hub. What is it?
Probably, so for like for extreme heat, so where you'll have cooling centers. Resiliency Hub could also be medical facilities that need to be paramount in terms of when you design and evacuation routes in the event that you need to get people to medical facilities. So there's just a few examples. Resiliency in the sense that you want to make sure that those particular facilities continue to function during the course of the event.
Got it.
So
Placer County Fairgrounds often used for
Right,
evacuations.
right. So it won't be our job necessarily to ensure the resiliency of that hub. That'll be in the terms of the jurisdiction or the first responders. Our effort here will be making sure that we can get people safely to those hubs as part of an evacuation planning effort.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? No?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Is there any discussion regarding eastbound? We have a lot of truck fires eastbound or westbound on Interstate 80, where trucks have been caught on fire. They were carrying hazardous weight, hazardous substance. Plus, we just had a Tesla truck fire that stopped traffic. That's a major trade corridor for the whole western United States. So has there been any discussion about rerouting traffic so we can get, instead of having them backed up for miles?
Well, we haven't specifically got into that, but that's a good issue. So, you've identified one of the first issues that we can highlight in our scope of work for consultants to look at. But, that's a very important point. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate that.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on what Jim just said, because you might be interested in looking into the cost, the economic cost of backups like that on highways. I think it was part of the forest resiliency where they did a study, and it was in the millions and millions of dollars of economic loss due to blocked highways.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I mean, wait your.
Right, that's an excellent point. And actually, the Economic Development Department of the county reached out to us to ask us if we had had any data on that, and unfortunately we didn't. But through this effort here, hopefully we'll be able to pull together such data.
Talk to Carrie Timmer. She's not in economic development, but she's got some study information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. So, also, not only does it back up traffic, most ways going on Interstate 80, but the ports are affected as well because there's product coming off the ports that need to be transferred, and so that backs up as well. So that's another cost, economic cost for.
There's a statewide impact. It's not just for a region.
It's a national
Yeah.
impact.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's a galactic.
So David, you mentioned that we needed to shift to alignment with the OES LHMP timeline. So what is the difference and what is their projected timeline?
So well, when we worked with OES back in December, January, as part of preparing the schedule, the local hazard mitigation plan schedule was sort of also being developed at that time. And so we were looking at, initially when we submitted this grant, a year-long planning effort. So we would have had this completed in October 25 because we wanted to provide this as an input into the finalization of the local hazard mitigation plan, which we were under the understanding was due to FEMA in January, February of 26. However, the local hazard mitigation plan schedule has changed, it has lengthened out, and won't be completed until October of 26. And so we basically have stretched our schedule out a year so that we can fit within that schedule. Yeah.
So given some of the comments from the board, certainly whatever efforts are available to help expedite and ensure those processes continue, given the impacts of Interstate 80 being shut down and traffic being pushed up through Grass Valley and
Right.
shutting the movement of tractor-trailer units completely up and down that highway, certainly time is of the essence.
Right. Well, we will be working with all of the jurisdictions here and probably making presentations to your various councils and boards, so, and seeking input from your staff.
Right. But I would rather have the grant than push our timeline versus the other timeline.
All right, it's understandable, and we had that discussion with Caltrans, but they felt that the timeline I prepared was a bit aggressive.
Okay.
I love it. Caltrans, whoa, slow down there.
All right, wonderful. All right, any other questions from the board? There being none, does anyone from the public in chambers wish to comment on this item? Yes, sir.
Yes, Chair Broadway. I didn't think I was going to speak on this, but Member Holmes and Member Jones brought up some very interesting points, and it made me think. The states, California and Nevada specifically, collaborate on issues we just saw recently in the last month on Lake Tahoe. Keep Tahoe blue. Secretary Buttigieg was in the audience and spoke and presented, and there was a lot of media coverage about how there's a lot of cross-regional, jurisdictional collaboration on that. Some of the points made about the truck that caught on fire and maybe some collaboration across the states. Placer County, El Dorado County, Washoe County, California, Nevada, City of Reno, diverting from Salt Lake City along westbound I-80 into Reno to southbound 395 and getting back to Interstate 80 via westbound Highway 50. If that truck's goal was to get their goods and services over to the Port of Oakland in Alameda County. And so I could see a vision where the collaboration on Lake Tahoe was so great that something of this nature can learn from what occurred on all the Tahoe issues and now put a placeholder on it for interstate transportation of all modes across the spectrum. So just something to think about there, and thank you both for your comments on that and opening up the conversation to a broader spectrum of topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. All right, is there anyone else in chambers that wishes to comment on this item? Corey, do we have anyone online? No? All right, again, that was informational only, so thank you, David, for the presentation. Our next item is the Executive Director's Report. Matt?
Thank you. And, before I move into what's on the slide there, I do want to point out, just as a reminder to the board, sometimes when we're talking about some of this planning work, it can seem esoteric or it's going to take a very general in nature. But really, I want to remind all of us that at the end of the day, whether it's Corey's ATP work or what David just talked about with climate resiliency, the end goal here is to come up with a list of projects, right, that can then go seek additional funding and dollars for delivery. So, Corey's planning work, we really see as pre-development. And right now, we don't have a list of, class 1 bike lanes and, all the different sorts of facilities. And what will come out of that planning work is an agreed upon list of this is our priorities for future funding for projects so we can build stuff. And very similarly for what David was talking about too with climate resiliency. So just wanted to point that out. Briefly, I thought I'd talk about in the Executive Director's Report, the last 20 months we've been talking about funding and future funding, and we don't often tell the story about grants. And so I just wanted to point out a few things for you, and I appreciate Michael really being here, and he teed something up for me. I didn't know he was going to be here, so it was a happy accident. But over the summer, I had the great pleasure of attending the Watt I-80 SAC-RT station groundbreaking. Congressman Kiley and myself went. And I do want to point out something that we as PCTPA should be very proud of, and it's the fact that it was the Placer-Sacramento Gateway Plan that led to all of this planning agency. We were the lead agency led by David Melko on doing this work with SAC-RT and others, which then resulted in solutions for congested corridor funding. So, that work, we put $8 million of grant funding into that station. And I think it was great too because Congressman Kiley got to see some of the active work that we've been doing and how it does result in groundbreakings and real projects, not just sort of, plans that sit on shelves. So I also want to move on and talk about our grant activity. One of the things, that I did when I onboarded is, we got together as a staff and we looked at all of the local, regional, state, and federal grants that we might have the ability to pursue. And we had 35 or 50, Corey manages that spreadsheet for us. And we got together in a war room and we said, okay, we're only 7 people. What can we go after? That's one of the issues when you get away from formula funding and you have to go through these competitive grants. And even smaller agencies than ours, they don't have the capacity to compete. So we took a very strategic approach and we focused in on 3 grants. The ATP grant, which was on the agenda today, evacuation and resiliency, which David talked about, and carbon reduction and ZEV, which we brought to you in June. And we won all 3 of them. And so I'm very proud of staff's efforts on that. So we went 3 for 3, that's a 100% win rate, and brought in $2.3 million. And while that might not seem like tens of millions, it will set us up for future rounds of funding, whether it's CEFI relative to energy, which I know Roseville and Rockland is looking to go after as municipalities. But it's going to be that sort of stuff. So we've been very successful in the grant activity. Not to mention I think the 14.9 million we brought to I-80 aux lanes, or the 25 million we brought to CCJPA third track. So just a bit of a story that I think we should do a better job of talking about. And then moving into the future, I do want to make the board aware that we will be going after a RAISE grant, a federal RAISE grant in 2025. So we will be working with our federal lobbyist and others to put together that application, and that is a $25 million grant. So regardless of what happens in November, We will be looking to advance southbound widening of State Road 65. How big of a project and how much we can afford to do will obviously be determined on what other sort of local funding we'd be able to bring to that project. But this all does sort of weave into a nice story, is sort of what we've done in the past, and spending some time with Congressman Kiley, who's just been an absolute robust champion for us, and as you all know, is now on the House T&I committee, and even more important, the Highways Subcommittee of that committee. We got to talk at the groundbreaking and talk about our history of performance, and also let him know about, wanting to come to him and talk to him about this RAISE grant. And he can't wait for us to come visit him in DC and lay out what we're going to be doing. So that will be a major grant activity for the agency in 2025. So if there's no questions, that ends my report.
Well, I just want to test my acronym. Rebuilding America's infrastructure sustainably and equitably?
Oh, you want to know? No. Is
was
that it? Corey, does he got it?
I got it? 100%.
Oh,
All right.
100%.
Working on my acronym.
Wow. Did you Google that? Did you
No.
really?
No.
Wow, that's
His
impressive.
phone is face down.
Is okay. All right. Okay. 'Cause
It is now.
that's great.
Chap tie? No, I can't.
No, you know. Yeah.
I'm in the executive.
Sir.
Do you want to go over with the board the final framework for the 6-county funding round?
Oh, yeah.
At SACOG?
Yeah, from SACOG.
Yeah, I'd actually.
Wrap that up, so.
Yeah, Rick, do you want to actually? Rick's been on the working group. He would be the best person to address the board on
Yeah.
on that.
Good idea.
Yeah.
It's a huge.
That's a great point. We've got the time.
Yeah.
Off the cuff.
Good morning, Board. So as Mr. Joyner mentioned, the SACOG funding round, I'll back up. As you're all aware, we've been, with the federal corrective action, we've sort of been pulled in for our CMAQ and STBG federal funds that we used to award and allocate. Those are now within SACOG, and as part of that, we've been sort of pulled into the SACOG funding round. So they've gone through a process over the last roughly 18 months. Yeah, 18 months to revamp how they run that program. I do think I've been involved with the SACOG funding round in other employment for a decade plus, and I do think that they have made some very some good and beneficial changes to that program to help it run better and recognize some of the needs that have been noted by all the agencies in the SACOG 6-county region. So they've split it into basically 3 programs. The CMAQ dollars, it's congestion mitigation air quality, right? So it's sort of in the name. They've set up a program specifically for those dollars. It's a change from what they used to do. They used to combine everything together and sort of look at projects and kind of dole it out. And they've gone more grant specific. So they've got a program set up that's essentially congestion mitigation air quality. So looking specifically at those projects. And again, it's 6-county program, compete for those. Then they took the STBG dollars that are surface transportation block grants. So they split that into 2 pots. One of those pots is, I'm going to get the name probably wrong off the cuff, but it is essentially maintenance work. So there's been a big push from all of the agencies. We need more dollars basically for pavement maintenance. So they're going to set aside a set of dollars. It's basically pavement maintenance. You can apply, basically maintain roads. There is fix it first. Yes, there's some emphasis from SACOG on routes that are, I guess, they've got a little more than just being a road. They want roads that are transit routes that have bike and ped facilities, access to schools, truck routes. There was a lot of discussion over kind of ag routes and agritourism, so they've got that sort of set into their evacuation routes was another big thing. So it's fairly broad. Those dollars are restricted from federal regulations anyway to basically collectors and above, minor arterials and above, excuse me. So most of those routes sort of fit into that anyway. And then the last component of the STBG is, I don't recall the name that they attached to it, but that is the kind of more general transportation projects. So signalizing, ITS type work, safety improvements, kind of that broad thing. The sort of the one component that's excluded from that is any capacity increasing work that is not like a managed lane. So that's sort of the one component that's out. Otherwise, it's very broad.
If I could too, Rick, one of the big takeaways for me was one of the last things you talked about. So maybe in simple terms, could you brief the board on the position about funding new capacity projects? Highway expanding projects, roadway expanding projects. What's SACOG's position on that now through this funding policy?
Yeah, so essentially from a new capacity standpoint, right, there's a big push, from the state and somewhat from the feds to limit the amount of new capacity coming in because the requirements for VMT reductions and meeting greenhouse gas reductions. So they're really looking for that to be funded, locally and not with state and federal dollars.
Yeah. So if I could tap in there, I mean, one of the things that's been going on through this blueprint process that a lot of you are familiar with, and of course, you all have the local land use authority, is there's been this conversation about where should the land use be, where should it not be, how do we balance this, because we're trying to achieve this 19% GHG reduction that the Air Resources Board is putting on us, et cetera. And so there, a lot of your local staffs first went through and saw these land use changes, and there was a lot of conversation about appropriateness, not appropriateness, all of that. And then the second, round of that is then the transportation projects that are going to be in or out inside of SACOG's blueprint. I think we're going to get a second list by the end of this week. And so again, there's a lot of consternation about, well, this project's out or this project's in. But with all of that said, even if the project is still in, and let's say your local roadway project makes it in, it's still not going to have, if it's a new capacity roadway widening, any opportunity to gain funding through the funding policy. So on one hand, there's this land use plan and associated transportation improvement projects and a lot of conversation and concern around that process and what it results in. But even if you're in, you're still not going to have any associated funding to build anything. So it just reinforces, I think, the position that we are going to have to locally solve for and generate funding locally if we're going to want to do certain categories of transportation projects inside of Placer County and the 6 municipalities. Is that
Correct.
fair?
Yes, that's a good summary.
Thank you.
So where we are today could not have been envisioned 18 months ago. And so Board Member Joyner was very gracious to have you, but I want to thank you, and I think the City Council Member Gallardo sat on the Formula Funding Committee for the last, just you.
So there were just 6 of us.
Yeah, just
as
you
elected,
representing
one
us.
from each county.
So I want to thank you for your diligence to represent us in that process.
Appreciate it. I think we wound up in about the best place we could have.
Yeah. All things considered, yeah.
Okay.
Although I just want to add to that I spoke to James about, all of our planning, because, look at the Sunset specific area, all that planning that's going to go out, Placer Ranch, the satellite, Sac State, all of that stuff that's going to go out there. I said, it's huge, tons and tons of houses, lots of cars. So it's kind of hard to say that, we can't have any highway improvements. But he said, well, the idea is that in that area you have services and everything, so people don't have to go places. But my question is, how are we going to stop them from going to the mall? I'm sorry, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of for me, it's a pipe dream, but
There is the sort of the you know, and I'm not a land use planner, but been doing this a minute, you know, there's these ideas that what we will do is we'll have these village sorts of concepts. These are not new. This sort of idea is all across the US. And the idea is we'll have shorter trip lengths, and we'll have people who can go to the Nugget, or they can go to the shopping market, right? Either rolling, biking, or walking, or in their car for a mile or two and not 12.
Right.
Yeah.
I live in a community that did just that. They planned
Yeah.
a little commercial area for, you know, dry cleaners, coffee shop, and you know what? Nobody walked there, and nothing could stay in business. So it's one thing to plan stuff that you think people will do, use, want, when
Right.
they don't. So, and all of those folks that are developing out in our areas and the west portion of Placer County, we're not gonna stop them, you know?
Yep.
We're not gonna stop them.
So that's one of the elements that I've always found interesting about the work that SACOG necessarily does. It doesn't apply to the real world. The public doesn't know that those conversations are going on and aren't going to be shaped by the decisions being made there. They're gonna do what they're gonna do.
That's very true, very true.
Yeah, and that's why in this, I isolate, there's that, I guess we'll call it work that's going on, and those conversations about, you know, the land use planning and associated project list, that lives in a world. But then, you know, from the chair I sit in, you know, I think of, you know, we have to deliver mobility improvements for this county.
Yeah.
And really, without money, the conversation doesn't really move the needle. And so that's why I thought I wanted to sort of chip in on what Rick was presenting out as far as where we're at with that funding policy. The reality is if we don't self-perform for that, we won't have the ability to do anything on the roadway side.
And speaking of mobility, on August 22nd, Tom Phillip did a very nice editorial in the Sacramento Bee on the Capitol Corridor and rail and things like that. And while we, you know, and you can see it on page 55, while we're not back to, and this is for the entire Capitol Corridor system, while we're not back to 2019 numbers, one of the things that will happen in 2025 is that the A's will be playing at Sutter Health. And so you will have a commute that's coming from the Bay Area in addition to going to the Bay Area. And I think that that will introduce, well, not introduce the folks in the Bay Area, but that will increase those dynamics as well. You know, this fall when the 49ers are playing at Levi Stadium, you know, when you have these events like Taylor Swift, they get a lot of ridership on Capitol Corridor. And you know, we have a lot of information in our packet, and I just wanted to, because of the timeliness of Tom Phillips' editorial, I wanted to point out the Capitol Corridor information in our packet.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, any other comments or questions from that? Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that update. Appreciate it. Next item, board direction to staff. Any direction to staff from the board? No? All right, next item is informational items. We had informational items provided in our packet, so if you need those, again, as was mentioned, the Capitol Corridor Service Performance Overview, and as well as the TAC minutes. With that, our next meeting is September 25th here in Chambers, and with that, our meeting is adjourned.
No, I will be in
All right.